Is record collecting addictive? Are we so tied to the music emotionally and physically that we can't stop? We will discuss on this episode of Talking About Records. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl. If you'd like to shop with us online, you can do so anytime at ntxvinyl.com. And you can also check out our weekly shows on Whatnot, where we sell vintage collectibles and used LPs. Let's talk about addiction. If you're a record collector or a music buyer, if you will, you know what this is all about. It's about the FOMO. It's about the fear of missing out. It's about the idea of if you pass on something, maybe you'll never see it again, or maybe you'll never see it again at that price. But the thought that something can be addictive usually comes with a very negative connotation, because addiction obviously is a very serious thing in most cases. Now, when it pertains to collecting something like records or anything that's collectible, if you will, you get into the conversation of, is it unhealthy? Is it a negative thing or a bad thing to collect something like records? Something that's physical, something that costs money, something that takes up space. I tell people all the time, like, look, there are much worse things to be addicted to. There are much worse things to spend your money and your time on, in my opinion, obviously. The reality is here that for people like myself, and probably like you if you're watching this video, we have a very strong attachment to music. Not only music, but the physicality of music and owning something physical that represents that music, right? So there is a physical connection. There is certainly an emotional connection. And that really speaks to the addictive qualities of this hobby, in my opinion. I can say I'm addicted because I love music. I really do. I love listening to music. I love seeing it live. I love the experience of owning it and playing it. Those are all things that play into my personal addiction. One of the things that I thought is really a red flag of addiction is multiple copies of the same record, right? I went to play a record the other night. I went to play Let It Be by the Beatles. I was looking at the Beatles section. I haven't listened to any Beatles in a while. And I went to grab a copy of Let It Be. And I think I had 3 or 4 on this shelf behind me, categorized with the Beatles section. And I started to grab one. I was like, wait a second, I think I have a box set of this too. And I was like, oh, I think I've got this in the stereo box set as well. So long story short is, I thought, man, I've got a lot of copies of this record. Do I really need that many? Yes, the answer is yes, because the album means that much to me. And that's the thing that really prompted me. So I went to my Now Spinning group, my NTX Vinyl Now Spinning group, which you can get to it at this link here if you'd like to join. It's a fantastic group of record collectors and music nerds like me and probably like you. And I showed a picture of all of my copies of Let It Be, which I'll show you. It seems a little ridiculous, but when I look at this in hindsight, I think, no, that's right. I've got the US version, the German version. I've got the standalone box sets, which has the outtakes. I've got the stereo version. I've got Let It Be Naked, which is an alternate version. And I threw it out there to the community and I said, okay, do me a favor. Show me that I'm not crazy and show me the different albums that you love so much that you have to have multiple copies of a singular album. And to someone who doesn't collect physical media or purchase physical media, this probably looks crazy and it probably looks addictive, because why would you need so many copies of the same music? Sure, there can be nuances, different mixes, different mastering of different quality. That's part of the fun of collecting, in my opinion, is that it's not always cookie cutter. As you do have to do a little research. You do have to put a little effort in, right? So I went to the community. I said, here's my collection of Let It Be. What you got? Well, what I got was a whole bunch of people who think just like I do. And the reality is it's not because they're hoarding the records and they're going to look to sell them later. or they're buying more than one copy to hold on to it, to flip it. It's not any of that. It really comes down to a love of the music. I know for me, and I know for a lot of these people. So I want to show a bunch of photos, which I think are super cool, of people that own multiple copies of the exact same album, because to me, that's probably the biggest thing that speaks to addiction, other than sheer quantity of an entire collection, which some people, even though they may only own 500 records, they may own 10 of their favorite album, different versions. And that's what I think these photos really show. So I'm going to go through these photos. This first one's from Alex Lemecki. He's got a couple of copies of a Zappa record. Chuck O'Neill, his favorite record, Grace by Jeff Buckley. Fantastic album. We had a little conversation online about which one's the best version and which one do you have. Again, complete nerd stuff, but I absolutely love it. And when it pertains to people's favorite albums, it makes total sense. Clay Moore is a good friend and a huge Kiss fan. So you can see here he's got multiple copies and formats of Kiss Unmasked, of Kiss Destroyer, of Kiss Rock and Roll Over. Kiss collectors are just out of this world. Like, I can't really think of another artist. There's very few that level up to the level of Kiss collectors. And if you're one, you know that, or if you've seen him. But he also does it just collect Kiss. So here's Clay's Metallica collection, cassettes, CDs, LPs, different formats. Newer album from David Gilmour. Did I say Roger Waters? From David Gilmour. That's from Darren Aldrich. Dave Pawlowski, Dark Side of the Moon. I could certainly do this one as well. In fact, if I look at this photo, I know I've got at least 3 or 4 of these, because I've got 1 or 2 Japanese. I've got the MoFi. I've got the ultra clear one. So Dark Side's definitely one of those collectible albums. So iconic from a visual perspective. So timeless from a music perspective. So it doesn't surprise me. There were several people that posted their photos of all of their copies of Dark Side. Again, an album that people absolutely cherish. Here's more Beatles: Revolver, Def Leppard, The Police. So here's a great one of the Charlie Brown Christmas. You got different copies, different colors. So now this is an interesting one because it's the first one, I believe. I guess maybe the David Gilmour one got into a little bit, but the variants collecting. So these days, typically, when you're talking about newer albums and people talking about multiple versions, it typically comes down to colored vinyl. It comes down to different variants, whether you have the Target exclusive, the Walmart exclusive, the Barnes & Noble exclusive, the Indie exclusive, all these different colors. And that's kind of what multi-format collecting has become in 2024. But most of these photos, as I flip through them, here's Jeremy Goss going through all his copies of Joshua Tree, for example. Most of these from years past had to do with different versions from different countries, different pressings that maybe had extra tracks on them. Certainly, if you go into different countries, you might have extra tracks, different tracks. There are some variations in colors, but a lot of it really wasn't known as true variant collecting until very recently, when the colored vinyl explosion kind of came. And I'm not knocking one or the other. I'm just saying it's kind of looked at differently these days in regards to multiple copies of the same album, because and you'll see some of this in here. Some people have the same album that came out all in 2023 and they got 20 different copies of it just because it's 20 different colors. That's your thing. That's awesome. But most of these are more varied than that, if you will. So here's Jimmy Erskine's Twisted Sister copies. A couple from my friend Joan Kershaw. So here's one of all of her 7-inch 45 RPM singles of I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles. And then here's a cool shot of the Buddy Holly Story, a couple different versions of that one. So here's Led Zeppelin 2. I could mirror this photo as well, just like I could do with the Dark Side of the Moon. So as I'm showing you these pictures, does this speak to addiction? That's kind of the question. I guess it does. I guess it really does. And I'll say it again. If you're going to be addicted to something, there's way worse things to be addicted to than music. And that's really what this is for me. If you're a passive listener and you're fine to just click play on your phone, hey, and enjoy the music from there. That's the way you enjoy the music. But for people like me and for people like these members of the Now Spinning group, it goes much, much deeper than that, because not only do we love the music for what it is, we love the music and the different formats and the ability to actually own it and put it on a shelf and call it our own and live with it for years and decades. Those particular copies. There's so many stories, and you talk to people all the time who have records in their collection that they got when they were 5 years old, 10 years old, or copies were passed down from their parents, and now that you have your parents' record collection, or an aunt or an uncle or something like that. So there's just so much nostalgia and so many memories tied to the physical copies that I think that really speaks to the reasoning behind a lot of this, is people getting nostalgic about a specific album and where it came from and what country it's from, what year it came out, those types of things. I know for me, that's what typically happens when I have multiple versions of an album, like my versions of Let It Be, is because I just love the album so much and I don't want to let go of any copy of it. I do, certainly, but I don't want to. Moving along, Joshua DeMessa, here's a great Beatles collection of Abbey Road and Pepper and Revolver and the White Album and Let It Be and Magical Mystery Tour. I love seeing that. Here's a really cool shot from Kenny. What's his last name here? I want to double check. Kenny Dove from San Antonio. Here's a great little collage of his versions of the White Album. I love that 1978 white vinyl version of the White Album. How about Sports from Huey Lewis and the News? Pretty common album, but again, if you love it, it's hard to let go of it, you know. Pearl Jam 10 from my buddy Kevin Graham. Gotta love that. Kevin Weiler, Black Sabbath 4 and Black Sabbath self-titled. Both really cool. Both albums that have a lot of different versions of them. Certainly UK versus US and current pressings, because most of these albums that we're showing, not all, but most of them are really iconic albums that have been pressed for years and years over the course of decades. So if you're a collector, there's a lot to chase after, which again is part of the fun of collecting and part of why it gets addictive, because once you go down that rabbit hole and you think, okay, I've got, Sabbath self-titled, I've got the original UK Vertigo, now I've got the original US press, now I've got the colored version. Oh, I want to pick up this audiophile pressing now. Oh, I need to get the one that's on 2LP because it might sound better. There's just so many ways to go about it. The box set version, so you gotta love that. Doors, LA Woman. I know this is from Chris Davis, super big Doors fan. So here you go. I see the Analog Productions copy. I see an RSD Outtakes version. See a foreign version, obviously, and a bunch of US copies with the rounded corners. I love seeing those. And here's his Doors self-titled again. So you got Mobile Fidelity, Analog Productions, a couple Mobile Fidelity copies there, just a couple of CD copies. Here's Leslie Hunter's collection of Rumors. I certainly have my fair share of Rumors as well. Brandi Carlile's Give Up the Ghost, an album that was just reissued and very hard to find until recently. But here's Mallory Donald's collection, which a couple of really valuable ones in there, I can tell, because if you have an original version of this one, it's a sought after record. Jerry Cantrell's Brighton from Nate Tower. Ozzy from Rob Stokes. Couple from Roger Johnson, AC/DC fan, obviously. We've got Let There Be Rock, as well as Highway to Hell. Scott One Time's got a couple copies of Nirvana and Euro. I own both of those. That 2013 Albini mix is pretty cool. Amorca, great album and a great shot from Steve Crocker. My buddy Tim Arnold and his love for Tom Petty's Wildflowers, right there with you on this one. I've got everything there pictured. Well, not the different formats, but the LPs, because I don't do a lot of different formats. Here's a true variant, kind of modern day variant collection from Todd Rebello, who's a big 21 Pilots fan, obviously. So you can see there, he's got, what it looks like 14 different versions of their most recent album. So again, a lot of people knock this. A lot of people, well, why are you hoarding all of those? Why are you just trying to flip it? No, I guarantee you, Todd's just a huge fan. And he just loves to collect these records. He loves to engage with the hobby and own every different color. And he loves to show them off. And that's a part of it for a lot of people. And I totally get it. Here's a couple, Sade from Vipin and Zachary's Third Eye Blind collection. So you get what I'm saying here. Like, are all these people addicted? Am I addicted? Yeah, but the word addiction in this case, I don't think comes with a very negative connotation. In fact, I think it's a very positive one, because I know everyone who jumped on this as a challenge to show me their albums that have multiple copies. I know they were excited to do it. They were like, "Oh, that's an excuse for me to pull them out and show them off." You know, that's what's fun about doing this. That's what's fun about collecting records to a lot of people. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you just have one copy of each album that you love, and that's it. But there are a lot of different reasons why people collect. And this type of thing, going down a rat hole on your favorite album and getting multiple different versions of it to experience what those are like, whether it be different differentiations in sound or visually, different packaging, different artwork, all those types of different things, I think play into what makes this hobby fun. And I think that's really the main thing that I try and talk about here on this video series is, and what I'm going to try to continue to do more of, is the aspects of the hobby that are really fun for people, because I think that's what's most interesting to talk about, and what keeps me energized to keep talking about records is the fun aspects of it. So let me know, do you have multiple versions of any albums? What albums do you have multiple versions of? I'd love to see that, because for me it's always interesting, because I go through these photos, I'm like, oh, I would never need more than one copy of that. And then there's others where I'm like, oh yeah, I've got 20 of those. Maybe not 20. I think I probably have, for the biggest albums in my mind, like a Dark Side of the Moon, or certainly the Led Zeppelin and Beatles catalog, some of my favorite artists, U2, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. There's probably, I would say, about, in my collection, 7 to 10 artists where I've got some multiples. Beyond that, I trim down, and I do try and keep it to just maybe the best sounding version, simply because I'm just going to be out of space. And I think that is a consideration here too. People, you have to manage that addiction. You have to manage that versus the amount of money in your bank account and the amount of space on your shelves, and you got to find that balance. So will I always have 10 copies of Dark Side of the Moon, all the different versions? Probably not, because eventually I'm probably going to need that shelf space, and I'll clear it out to make room for other records. And when that time comes, I'll deal with it then. But for right now, I love that album so much, just like some of these others, that it's hard for me to let go. And so yeah, Addicted. Here you go. You're looking at the poster child for it. Obviously, let me know how you feel about it. Let me know what level of addiction you're in right now, and we'll chat about it. Thanks for watching. As always, my name is G.I. Sanders, and we'll see you again soon on another episode talking about records.